The galaxy had seen wars before. Empires had risen and fallen, species had clashed over resources, ideology, and dominance. But no one, not even the most battle-hardened civilizations, had ever seen what was about to unfold. It started with an execution. A message. A warning. General David Straighten was no ordinary soldier. He was the kind of leader men would follow into hell without hesitation. Decorated, respected, and above all, a symbol of human defiance. The kind of man who made enemies nervous just by standing in a room. The Zed-Tharii Dominion, rulers of over 50 star systems, did not believe in diplomacy. To them, strength was the only law, and humans were a species that had risen too far, too fast. A problem to be dealt with. They captured General Straighten during what was supposed to be a peace negotiation on New Liberty, an outer colony world where humanity and the Zed-Tharii had an uneasy truce. No trial. No discussion. Just a cold, calculated decision to make an example out of him. They hanged him in the center of a Zed-Tharii stronghold. Not a clean execution, Zed-Tharii tradition demanded that the condemned suffer. They ensured he struggled, gasping for air, his body failing him as his enemies watched. And then they broadcasted it across every human colony. They wanted fear. They wanted submission. They got rage. The broadcast was meant to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it ignited something the Zed-Tharii couldn't understand, an unrelenting thirst for payback. From Earth to the furthest colonies, there was no debate, no hesitation. America had seen war before. They knew what had to be done. Within hours, the president stood before the world. The words were simple. This is not a conflict. This is not diplomacy. This is war. The Zed-Tharii believed they had crushed humanity's will. But they had just woken a beast. Military production skyrocketed. Factories that once built civilian ships were converted overnight into war machines. Spaceports turned into military hubs. Recruits lined up in numbers unseen since the earliest wars of Earth. Humanity had fought countless wars among themselves. But when an outside force threatened them, there was nothing more dangerous than a united human race. And at the heart of it all stood General Elias Carter, the man now leading the charge. Unlike Straighten, he wasn't the kind to give inspiring speeches. He was a tactician, a strategist who believed in only one thing: if someone strikes humanity, you strike back 10 times harder. The Zed-Tharii thought they had wiped out resistance before the war even began. They had no idea what was coming for them. Because when humanity goes to war, they don't stop. Not until the enemy is nothing but dust and memories. And this time, they weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for vengeance. The Zed-Tharii had ruled for centuries, their empire built on conquest, fear, and absolute military dominance. They had crushed rebellions before, wiped out entire species that dared resist them. Humanity was just another name on a long list of civilizations that had been broken beneath their boots. That was their first mistake. The second was underestimating what humans were willing to do for revenge. Within weeks, the first human fleets launched into Zed-Tharii-controlled space. The enemy had superior warships, faster engines, and shields that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. But they weren't fighting a species that relied on brute strength. Humanity had never won wars by being the biggest. They won by being smarter. The first battle was over Xiphos Prime, a heavily fortified Zed-Tharii outpost. By all logic, humanity should have lost. But instead of a direct assault, they did something no Zed-Tharii commander would have considered. They used the planet itself as a weapon. Covert teams infiltrated the surface and triggered seismic charges beneath the Zed-Tharii fortifications. Within minutes, the ground collapsed, swallowing entire battalions into fire and rubble. Then came the orbital strike, kinetic rods dropping at hypersonic speeds, turning the stronghold into dust. The Zed-Tharii had never seen war waged like this. Precision, deception, sheer audacity. And it was only the beginning. America and its allies didn't just fight on the battlefield. They fought everywhere. Their best hackers infiltrated Zed-Tharii communications, feeding them false intelligence, turning their own networks against them. Sabotage teams disabled entire fleets before a single shot was fired. AI-driven warfare algorithms predicted Zed-Tharii movements before they even made them. The war was no longer about brute force. It was about outthinking the enemy. And then came the mind games. The Zed-Tharii valued strength above all. If a leader showed weakness, they were executed by their own people. Humanity exploited that. Deepfake broadcasts showed Z-Thari warlords cowering, surrendering, breaking under pressure. Entire fleets turned against each other, convinced their commanders had betrayed them. Psychological warfare at its finest. The Z-Thari still refused to believe they were losing. They gathered their largest armada, preparing for a final crushing assault. The plan was simple: strike at Earth itself, wipe out the heart of humanity, and end the war in a single decisive blow. It was the greatest strategic blunder in their history. Because humanity had been waiting. And Earth was no easy target. They didn't just build defenses. They turned the entire planet into a fortress. Massive orbital platforms armed with railguns that could punch through Z-Thari warships in a single shot. Swarms of autonomous drone fighters controlled by AI fleets. And weapons no alien had ever seen before. The Z-Thari had walked into a trap. They thought they were invincible. They thought they were the apex predators of the galaxy. But they were about to learn the truth. They were prey. The Z-Thari had never experienced fear. Not real fear. Not the kind that crept into their bones and made them question everything they believed. But as they watched their unstoppable armada fall apart, something unfamiliar took hold. Doubt. Their war doctrine was built on overwhelming force. Conquer quickly, crush resistance, move to the next target. But humanity had shattered that strategy. They had turned battlefields into traps, technology into deception, and desperation into a weapon. The Z-Thari had expected submission. Instead, they found an enemy that refused to break, no matter the cost. The fleet that had set out to burn Earth to ash never even made it to the surface. They were met with the full force of human ingenuity and relentless fury. Electromagnetic disruption fields rendered their shields useless. Cyber warfare programs hijacked their command systems, turning their own ships against them. Hypersonic torpedoes tore through hulls like paper. A battle that should have been an easy victory became a massacre. The Z-Thari admirals ordered a retreat. But there was no escape. Humanity had anticipated this. They had positioned strike groups along every potential withdrawal route, cutting off every possible escape. For the first time in their history, the Z-Thari weren't the ones dictating the war. They were being hunted. Desperation took hold. Their warlords convened in secret, grasping for a way to salvage the disaster. The answer was clear: they had to make a final stand at their homeworld. Every remaining fleet was recalled. Every stronghold fortified. This was it, the last chance to prove their supremacy. But they still didn't understand who they were fighting. Humanity wasn't interested in a long, drawn-out siege. They weren't going to throw lives away in a war of attrition. Instead, they did what they did best. They adapted. They didn't just attack. They infiltrated. Stealth teams, invisible to Z-Thari sensors, slipped past enemy lines, planting neural disruptors in key locations, crippling communications, shutting down defensive systems, turning the Z-Thari empire blind and deaf. Then came the final blow. A virus. Not a biological one, but something far worse. A self-replicating digital plague designed to dismantle the very foundation of Z-Thari military control. Within hours, their warships turned into floating husks, their weapons locked, their fleets paralyzed. The strongest empire in the galaxy had been reduced to nothing without a single shot being fired. And that's when it finally hit them. They had spent centuries believing they were untouchable. That no force could ever challenge them. That strength alone was enough. But humanity had shown them a different kind of strength. The kind that couldn't be measured in muscle or firepower. The kind that came from refusing to be conquered. For the first time in history, the Z-Thari knelt. Not because they were forced to, but because they had no other choice. The war was over before the last battle even began. The Z-Thari had lost control of their own fleets. Their defenses were crippled, their leaders in disarray. But humanity didn't rush to claim victory. They waited. They watched. They let the Z-Thari feel the weight of their own downfall. Panic spread through the once mighty empire. Civil unrest erupted as warlords turned on each other, desperate to salvage what little power remained. Without their military dominance, the Z-Thari's entire system of rule began to collapse. Then the ultimatum came. Surrender unconditionally, or face extinction. For a species that had never submitted, that had never known what it meant to bow to another, the choice was unthinkable. But the reality was undeniable. Humanity had broken them without a direct invasion, without a drawn-out siege. They had dismantled an empire through sheer tactical brilliance, technological superiority, and psychological warfare. There was no future in resistance. Only annihilation. So they knelt. The official surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The same species that had once executed a human general in a public spectacle now stood before humanity, heads bowed, defeated in every way that mattered. But humanity didn't gloat. There were no grand declarations, no drawn-out celebrations. Victory wasn't about proving superiority, it was about ensuring this never happened again. The Zed-Tharii were stripped of their military power, their warlords removed, their empire dismantled. They would never threaten another species again. Some civilizations would have wiped them out entirely. But humanity didn't. Because true dominance wasn't about destruction. It was about control. Earth didn't just win a war. They changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't the strongest species. They weren't the fastest, the most advanced, or the most numerous. But they were the most dangerous. Because when pushed to the brink, when given no choice but to fight, humanity didn't just survive. They adapted. They evolved. They won. And they never forgot. Neither did the rest of the galaxy.